Hi, everybody. We're live on today's webinar, and we're with Bill Gagnon again for the third episode in our series around digital transformation. I want to introduce Bill. Hi, Bill. Welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, Brian. How are you? Thanks for having me today for a third time back. I wasn't canceled yet. It's great. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Gagnon. I head up digital marketing and transformation over at Boston Children's Hospital.
Awesome. And I'm Brian Anderson. I'm the CEO of Augusto Digital. We do consulting, digital transformation, and custom software solutions in healthcare. And Bill's been one of our clients, and he has amazing insights. And I think it's great to be able to share them with everyone. And so today's focus is going to be on building digital transformation teams that can adapt to the rapidly changing healthcare landscape. And so I'm going to start that off just by letting Bill kind of help us understand a little bit more about this landscape. So, Bill, how has the landscape evolved in recent years? And what key digital transformation trends do you see shaping its future?
So I think I'll take the first step by kind of going into the employee point of view, because that's really kind of tricky. It's, you can't really transform anything digital if you don't have a good infrastructure, a team, right? And what I found over the years is that a lot of the people that are out there in the market now, they've it's almost like hospitals. They've all become specialized clinicians. So the old days, like when I started out my career, you're kind of like head chef, cook, and bottle washer, right? You're doing coded websites, you're building the website, you're doing the graphics, you're doing the marketing. Now everybody's specialized. And while that's great and you get some really good, skill sets out there, it's hard to build the digital transformation team because you really need people that can work together and across all the platforms. And the other thing I also look for too is that, when I have a team that's built for this, I want to make sure that, not always do I hire somebody that comes from the healthcare arena, because people that come to our website at the hospital and look for different things, they want the same experience they have on Amazon, Zappos, different places that they shop on. And if they don't get that, so that's why I look for somebody that has like a retail background or somebody that has like more cross platforms, that has worked in different areas. Healthcare is great to know, basically what patients need and clinicians, but it's definitely what I'm looking for is that next thing, because they also, bring cutting edge technology to you when they come from other places as well. Like, what are they working on? What are people expecting? And that second part of your question was like, what's emerging and things like that. And, I think that the last conversation we talked a lot.
All right, we're back live again. So yeah, we're just going into trends, right? So like, what are you seeing emerging right now in the health system, healthcare landscape?
So as we're coming, as we've come out of COVID, and into bigger mainstream, people are still, looking for, a lot less of travel getting into a location to be seen. So, I think that one of the things that we were excellent at starting up, which is like virtual visits and other type things online. People want to keep that going, and so we're doing more that we can to give more information and do the less about, like maybe having to come physically into the hospital and things like that. And a lot of that tends to be around, like I mentioned earlier, the tools like the chat bots, the the video. One of the things that we're working on now with our chatbot is adding in video and also escalation to a live person, so that way they can actually talk to that, and maybe down the road, who knows, maybe it's going to be a nurse that can actually do some triaging and help people know where they need to go. There are also, as we see in the news every day, there's a lot of emerging technologies. There's Chat GPT that we're always keeping an eye on, but we're also cautious at the same time, as I mentioned last time, is that healthcare is something that has to be a defined answer and support. We got to be careful on what we actually are telling patients and families when they're actually asking for these things. But we're also, one of the things that we're also looking at too is, it sounds like it's, old school, but it's just translations in language. It's always a challenge, especially when you have a website that's, 30,000 pages of content full. We need to be able to, talk to everybody's language and all of our tool sets as well. So these are some other things that we're looking at working on as well.
Yeah. And also, that digital front door really becomes the front door for a lot of people. That's where they start, right?
Right. Exactly.
And probably the majority of people start there these days. Do you think? Or
I absolutely do. And I think that you've got to, the other day I was in a meeting with my team and I was thinking, I went back to my days when I was at Citigroup, and, everything was kind of like on the table as possible. And, one of the things that I brought to my team is that, we're seeing that 40% of people are not even going to a website anymore. They're actually making their decisions on, basically on Google and the reputation management portions, as I was mentioning about. And so what we're trying to do now is bring some of our technology that's on the website, like our chatbot, like, virtual videos, and put that embedded into Google or other areas that people are looking at, and then get them from there to come talk with us, as opposed to going to the website altogether, because
Yeah.
they're looking for instant gratification, and you got to be there with the
Mhm.
tools to get them.
Yeah, and it's just like a normal business, right? You're building a funnel that, is built around search and people's needs and where are they going for information and how do you become one of the answers or the answer and how
Right.
does your reputation play into that? I know reputation management's a big part of what you need to do. Your staff, your doctors, they have reputations to live up to, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And ratings and reviews, that's a big thing right there too, what people actually think. And you can't ignore that. You got to make sure you have it, but make sure that it's cleansed appropriately, so it doesn't have like things that are, about traffic coming into the hospital as opposed to the actual visit.
Yeah. And then you're also kind of under different constraints too, because you have HIPAA and there's rules around cookies and what you can't store about people, right?
It's a wonder I sleep at night. And I think that a lot of people that are listening in are going to have that. It's a challenge. Where we're going through it multiple right now. It's that everything you do, and just to have intuitive information, and it's not even if we extrapolate all the HIPAA issues, because that's so first and foremost that we're very good about having things saved in a HIPAA compliant database, but it's more about just like general, like who came to the site, and you'd be surprised at how careful that you have to make sure everybody knows about it, and then what tool can you use, and are they basically being supportive to the community that's using it. It's a challenge, and I fear that it's one of the things that could, I'm seeing hospitals now, in the local Boston area, that if you go to their site, there's not even any code on there to track anything.
Yeah.
So they're running blind, and that's fine. You can get away with it for a little while, but then things start happening, like you drop out of search because the
Yeah.
search engine don't see you. So all these things have a cascading effect on it, and we're dealing with it right now. And like you said, things happen every day. And I just had a battle come the other day. It's like you got to be careful that if you don't keep some sort of metrics going, how matter you get that done, it's you could actually potentially lose grants to researchers, because there's something in the contract that says that they need to have proof of what they're spending money on and show the results and everything. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, more so than I think before. I think they were there, but it was just like nothing was really kind of being seen, and everything was moving nicely.
Yeah.
Now things have popped up and there's more restrictions. It's that way, and that's why one of the things that I'm glad that we actually took a front seat on doing ourselves outside of HIPAA, is also ADA compliance, and that we made the website, very ADA compliant, and every feature and functionality, and like the chat tool, and we just added some read speak to the whole site so it can be read out loud. So just different things like that to stay ahead of the curve.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And it is interesting because it's like, the digital front door and like all the way up to that top of the funnel into like Google and in these search technologies and like kind of how that leads into this funnel of a conversion. And then there's like a whole customer success portion of it on the other side of the bow tie of that funnel that's
Right.
all about the internal and how do you continue to build like a great experience for that person, that family, that patient, that referring doctor, whatever the customer is. And how do you streamline it all for your employees so that they have like good working, experiences as well?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And the one thing I would say is that don't be afraid to, kind of go old school sometimes. And what I mean by that is, you can put all the best technologies in place and have it all set up. But the reality is, especially in healthcare, uh, parents, especially with in the pediatric side of things, parents want they're concerned about their child, and they're very nervous about what's going to happen. They need to be basically comforted and talk to a live person, and so
Mhm.
humans are a big portion of this. And so that's one of the things that we do, is that I could have a bunch of tracking, but the biggest challenge for a digital person is that how do you get the tracking from the person that saw you in like online, and then they pick up the phone and they call you
Mhm.
organically, so
Mhm.
you lost it all, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of things that we're doing is we're, like I said, old school, is we're doing it like the days when you had like affiliate programs back in, like, I'm dating myself now, the 90s, late 90s, where you'd go and you write a code out of the book and you put that into the UTM and the code on the URL, and then the phone call would come through and trigger on the dialer, and then you're able to assess that. But then you're relying on people to put that into the system and document that came from Google My
Yeah.
Business or from, different places. But at least I can actually, at the end of the day, go to the C-suite and say, look at the results we're having.
Yeah.
We're having a bunch of people coming in. So, I'm a big believer. It's like, merge, anything you can do digital, but also have the backup of having it
Right.
manual, because you're going to have that.
So like kind of that's a good setup for like the scope of what digital and digital transformation is like inside of a large health system. So like as a leader who's, spearheading this, um, what are some of the critical factors you consider when assembling a digital transformation team?
Mhm. Well, you need people, like I said before, that are really, it's helpful if they're cross trained in other areas. I find if people are siloed in one, they don't really think outside the box. And a lot of times when you're coming in, like every time myself, when I take a different career path and I want to learn a different skill set, I'm going a little bit, probably 4 to 5 years back in time, because they wouldn't need me if they weren't back in time, right? And so they need to have somebody that can actually get them caught up with everything. So you need to have people that are flexible with that and understanding of it. And that is part of the challenge on it. But you also need, like I said, people that have tried different things and that they bring that with them when they come, because you need to have that, just new experiences to give a shot and try. And the largest thing is that, I don't want to say that they have to be people, persons, but they do need to be able to listen. And that's a skill set that's really not rampant these days. Because a lot of what we do is, we have meetings, all times a day. Even at night, I was last Friday at 7 o'clock, I was meeting with a different team of parents at the hospital, because they had the time to tell me what the experience is. And that's where you learn so much, because at the end of the day, those are the ones on their website.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so like you've got this kind of cross-trained group of people, and it really, you mentioned before, it kind of starts with this internal team first, right? So you really need a core. Like what are the types of people? What are the kind of things that make them successful?
Well, and the other thing I'll throw out there too is Boston Children's Hospital, it's a, you know, good sized hospital system with our satellites, but we do run things really slim. So I don't have a very large team, and so like I said, a lot of people do have to be cross trained in that. And we just break it down by the basically all this the components of what goes into a successful online business, where you have your developers, you've got your producers, you've got your UI UX team, you've got your metrics analytics, and then we also have a full arm for CRM for all of our customer engagement type things that are going on, and also email and marketing automation.
Yep.
So we blend all those together. And reputation, as I mentioned, was the last one that we just had to do, because literally overnight, it was just people literally were just saying, oh, I'm just going to go there and I found the doctor I want, and then I'm going to reach out to them and get that appointment.
Hmm. And then like those teams also have to like build relationships, right? Like
Oh,
the
yes.
maybe you could
They need
speak
to
to that a
gel.
little.
They need to gel really well. And so what we end up doing, which works out really well, is take a little page out of the book of our IT counterparts, is that we have daily Scrum meetings. And so basically that helps us out. And we even do it. We have Scrum meetings with like the people that we work on your team. So it's like
Mhm.
we keep aligned with the projects, but we also have everybody knowledgeable of what's going on, and then they can add their input onto it. And I find that's where you get a lot of the what if moments. People, like the reputation person might say, well, what about do we do this to get better ratings and reviews on the site? And so these are all things that I love to hear, because then they start to gel better together, as opposed to just like being in a silo and not having anybody to talk to.
Yeah, and there's like other stakeholders. Like you have to build sponsors within your company, right? Like within the hospital.
And that you just hit upon it. That's huge. I think anybody in the hospital that a new either technology or system, or just go a different path, have a stakeholder that's going to be a partner with you, because there's nothing better than I think I mentioned in my last seminar with you, is that getting up in front of everybody at like a department heads meeting in a hospital. Whereas it's a little bit of church and state in the hospital. You got administrative, you got clinical. But if you come together and the partnership is administrative and clinical talking to you about this, it makes it more solid and strong and believable, and people want to buy into it. And it also helps a little bit with keeping up the Joneses type mentality too. It's like, well, if they've got it, I want that.
Right, right. That's how change is happening, right? Um,
Exactly.
and then, what about like culture? Like, that culture of innovation, that culture of continuous learning. Like, can you speak to that? Like, what do you do to promote that within your team?
So in the team or in the hospital? Just in the team? Yeah.
Within your team and then broader, I think, like,
Okay. Yeah. Because in the team, it's funny. It's not so much promoting it, but it's keeping it there, if that makes sense. Because I think, I love when I see new people starting on board, and and it was a little rough during COVID because people were coming in, and they didn't come into a regular office, right? They came into a Zoom and they started working from ground one. So you lose a little of that connectivity. Now that we're back in the office and getting back together again, I've noticed that sometimes you do get a little bit of not so much kind of like they want.
Oh no, his connection has failed again. Yeah, I think that like we'll wait for him to come back here, but I think that culture is an important part. It's part of like um why we love working with Bill and his team is he does a great job of building a team, building a culture of wanting to change and make a difference. See if we can get him back here. Hey Bill, you back?
There you are. All right.
Your connection's up and down today. Yeah, so like kind of speak to that culture and keeping it.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's always good. You're not always able to bring on new people, but it's one of the things that I've been doing too is like with your company, I ask for like every 6 months, can we have a best practice sharing type of a get together? Nothing fancy,
Mhm.
but just let's talk about what everybody else is doing, because I do think that when teams get in a role, after a while they become very much like automated. You kind of do this and it's all the same. Yes, there's new things you might be bringing on for the next fiscal year, but you do get caught up into your regular rigor. And I think
Yeah.
it's great you hear different things that are out there. And like I said, we just had a person that does our paid search. She came in, and she just has like all these different thoughts, and people are like, this is great, it's refreshing. And
Yes.
the what if conversations start happening again, as opposed to like just goes from how this is how we do it to what if. And so, and it's it's just, it happens organically. That's why I try to keep either people coming in to talk about it, working with you guys, working with other teams that actually that can give us some best practices and things like that, because there's always something on the horizon that you could use that you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like promoting that ability, that information sharing, working together, communicating, like serving the ultimate purpose of what you're trying to do, which is
Right.
improve the patient experience or improve the efficiency of how you operate or do things within the hospital, right?
Exactly.
Um, and so like let's talk about partners. We've been a partner for a while now with Boston Children's. Like, you know, what's it like? Like, what's the criteria you use to select the right partners, and how do you ensure you get like a good collaboration between your internal teams and your external experts?
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's a great question. I love when I'm in seminars, people say that, but it's actually a nice direct question, I'll say. It is something that comes up, and I think I've told you this in the past, and you luckily didn't take it personal, but I am one that's really kind of averse to sometimes outside partnership, because it's another like management that I've got to do. And a lot of times too, I know what it's going to be like to get the team to play nice together, because I've been on the other side of things. I remember like growing up at GE, and you would go into the president every like week, and you pitch this, what we should be doing, and then you see this other like $1 million vendor come up and they do an assessment, same exact thing. They're like, oh, we should do that. It drives you insane. You're like, oh my god, it's like I've been telling you this. So you kind of it kind of organically just happens, as somebody that grows up in the industry, that you are a little bit averse to it, because you're a little offended that they're not taking your suggestions when you're talking about it, because you're the industry expert inside the organization. With that being said, that's why it is a little bit of a challenge for me to like pick up the phone sometimes. And so like I was telling you, I think the other day, that I tell myself that once a month I'm going to let somebody through that has a new thought or energy. I want to like learn about it, so I try to like sit with the new team or a new vendor to find out what's going on that we should be looking at. But it is hard to get it in, and it's even harder with your teams. The other day, for instance, we were working with a design team that was working on a similar project for the trust, and I literally had to have a pre-call with my team just to be like, all right, everybody take a breath. It's like, it's not a judgment on what you can do or what you bring to the table, but it's a collaboration. And if done right, it really works well. And like going back to like, your team coming in on this, I had to do a similar thing. I mean, especially when, we had, it was a very sensitive time because we just produced and built our site migration from site core to Drupal, which was no easy deal, and standing it up on AWS, where we needed your help on completing that setup on AWS. And, of course, when you go to your team, the first thing you think is like, well, am I not doing my job? I'm like, yes, you are, but we need to make sure that we're fully stood up, and there's other things I want to work on. And what I like about the relationship that we've built is that I use it as like, I refer to it as a two-way street, is that, I don't have a lot of people, so I don't want to overcapacitize them. So a lot of great things is when I have stuff that's run off or overflow, that's what I can bring in your team to help out on it. So right now, like, sometimes I'm on calls and I don't even know, like I do know, but it's like my mind is like, I think they all work for me because
Yeah.
they all gel really well, and they're bouncing ideas off each other, and there's no like negativity coming out of things. Whereas sometimes, I've seen that where you bring on a vendor, it can happen because, of course the vendor is going to come in and they want to do the best they can to get more business. But I liked your approach that you don't do that. You look at it like, well, let's listen and figure out what we can do to help. And that's what really matters. The listening part is like learning your business, how you run it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like do you have a way of like seeking that out? Like, do you feel that in the very beginning when you start to interact with people that you decide to work with?
It's all in the approach. It's like dating. It's, if they come at me strong, I'm like, oh boy, I don't know. You didn't even buy me a drink yet, So, so the walls go up a little bit. But if you come at me and just say, look, could you share how you actually did this? Because I think everybody has pride of their ownership of what they've done or what they've been a part of. And so I'll be more than willing to say, yeah, I can talk to you about this or how we set this up, or even, could you give me ideas of how you got around different things? And it's almost like when you're at, now people are coming back together for conventions, things like that. But, a couple of times I've done roundtables, and when you're done presenting and you're off, in the regular crowd, having a, working session, I love that when people come up to you and say, hey, I caught this last session, and I'd love to know, how did you get around, like, legal saying, okay with a chatbot? And, you have that kind of banter, and it's also good, not just for like a person that's a peer, but a vendor as well, because if I know somebody comes to me and said, okay, but we have a chatbot that could do this or do that, then I'm willing to listen. It's like, all right, well, let's talk about this. And it's just the way that they introduce and they work with you, as opposed to not coming in as like the industry expert and you're at a loss if you don't do business with me. That just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And then one of the things that I wanted to also touch on is like this change management topic, like there's a lot of hurdles to adopting things. You mentioned legal or regulations like HIPAA, or, like how do you, but when you get to a point where you can start to influence that change, like how do you approach it and ensure kind of smooth transitions? And, what's the special sauce for getting big projects going and forming teams there?
Well, I think the special sauce is what you had mentioned a little while ago, is that, first thing you do is strike up a partnership with somebody that's well known in the hospital, that is very, is always known as a backer, and that's, vocal about the things as well. I've got a few go-tos that I work with on a regular basis, and they're very helpful in just getting the word out there and backing it up. Second thing is, don't try to come to a meeting with like a presentation and try to sell something that's not even like, in theory available. It'll drive, especially clinicians, to drive them crazy. They're going to shoot holes in it, and rightly so. It's like, always come with a real live working pilot or a demo, because that's the wow factor. And that's what we ended up doing. Like I mentioned last time is, we had a meeting in the department heads, which is like, all of our faculty. And we actually did a presentation where the chatbot was talking back and forth to, somebody in the support staff. And we had them on the phone talking and doing different things. And, everybody's kind of looking around like, that's real. That's live. I can actually use that. Because the worst thing is when you try to, you get somebody excited about something and then they say, when can I have it? It's like, oh God, that's like a year off. They're gone. Bye-bye. And I see it every day. It's like, no, don't do that. Come to the table with something that's, already kind of, and it's not always a possibility, but there's ways around it then. Like, a lot of times what I'll have my team do, and I know I drive them crazy, but if I need a working website, I'll have something, mocked up in HTML, like, overnight, that just shows the process in theory. And in essence, it looks like it's all working, but at least it gives
Yeah.
everybody an understanding of how it can be done. They don't have to know
Yeah.
it's like fully functional in the back end.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely makes it more concrete, right? Like it's
Mhm.
not just conceptual, it can be visualized. It's a prototype.
Right.
It's rapid, it's quick. It's like you've got the vision, it's a way of expressing it and getting people on board, and then you can do the work it takes to actually make it real over time.
Exactly. It's funny. We had one like a couple years ago, I think it was like 2018. We had wayfinding that we introduced, and of course everybody has an answer on how to wayfind and what it should be in there. And we did our due diligence talking to everybody, but we were going in 20 different directions. So we built up a prototype, and we went to that same meeting, and it was the week before the holidays. And so we had we had everybody sign on to the app, but they didn't even realize they were on the website. And then they were walking around the wayfinding, and it was a virtual 3D type thing, and they were trying to find different type of presents. And at the end of it, they said, "Well, what tool is this?" I said, "Well, this is our website. It's already live, so we
Yeah.
already have it." And this is how people go to the different areas, because while they were doing it, they saw that, oh, here's urology, or here's gastro, and it's like, oh, it's already done. And then everybody was like, "Oh my God, I want to do more with this." So it's again, it's just kind of having something that you can visualize and get people engaged in, because it's much easier for a conversation at that point.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate this. I want to open it up to a couple more just questions.
Mhm.
Um, and I've got a few of them in our kind of question bank from our team and some others. Um, what are the top three issues you were facing when you decided to bring us on? Like, what can you reflect back on that? Like, what were the three pains, or what are urgent pains that would lead you to hire somebody now?
Yeah. Well, it's always capacity, right? You don't have enough. You have, like, there's always more work than people you have, and they get burnt out. And especially in our department, we have a very slim team, and so I pride myself on doing more with less. But there's a point where you're burning out people, and then they're ready to leave at that point. You don't want to do that, so you want to bring in a good skill set. And I like the fact of having somebody that's not just like start and stop, but someone that's going to be there. And
Hmm.
and what I like about your team is that you can load balance. Maybe we're busy, March, April, May, but then I was slow down in the summer, and you're flexible with that, and that's great. A lot of
Hmm.
agencies won't be there. They'll. I remember one in Boston that would always just call me up and like almost like threatening that, well, I'm gonna pull people off the project. I'm like, well, okay, there's no project right now, so I guess you have to. But they didn't know how to load balance, and I get that it's hard when you have different jobs, but you really need companies that are flexible in how they actually
Yeah.
staff do that. So
Yeah.
that's big. And then you touched upon it earlier, is that your team does a really good job of engaging and working with the team that I have, all of them. And I've got definitely some different backgrounds of people that are, the coders are different than producers. They're different than UI UX. There's all different like personalities, and the teams just meld really well. And so I give them a lot of credit for being able to understand the room and read it well and be able to function with everybody. That's
Yeah.
important.
So, yeah, that that kind of leads into the question I had next, which is how do you decide to work with an external partner? Um, but it sounded to me like the major issue that you're facing is that the capacity issues. Like you'll hit capacity issues, or things will start getting stuck because of the capacity issues for one reason or another, and
Yeah.
that leads you into looking for solutions. And
Yeah.
um,
It,
and
it, it, yeah, it does.
and then like you know kind of you touched on like how do you decide on an external partner, right? Like um one of the questions that always comes up is how do you allocate funds to pay for partner services versus hiring, because I know sometimes you're hiring, sometimes there's hiring freezes. Like how do
There
you
you go.
figure out how to fund these things?
So in healthcare, I think everybody will probably shake their head and nod that it's not easy to have available FTE. It's very tight, and a lot of the hospitals now are going into hiring freezes, and it's understandable. The economy is a little bit tough, and they want to make sure that there's we have the job people doing the right jobs, and but you still need to do the work. So I think there's what I always tell people and my peers, like there's always ways to reallocate funding in your budget. It's just what are you willing to like not do any more of? And there's a lot of softwares that we had to retire that we didn't like figure that's going to have longevity and bring on a team of people to do this. I will say though, one of the attractive things about your company though is that the bill is always refreshing. It's not an East Coast bill, we'll say, so that does well with me and my finance team.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think that you could spread the word, like we're a value. We try to deliver a value to our clients,
It's very good value, yes.
and you know, um, like one of the questions, like how did you find Augusto? Like,
You,
what
you
was?
guys actually you guys actually found me, and it was the way that I talked about earlier, that the way to kind of get that the introductory date. And it was more of like, I'm not, like I said, you get all these email bombarded through your LinkedIn, like I have this solution that's going to save your world and all this. A person on your team called up and just said, could you tell me a little bit more about this article that you were written up about with it was about the chatbot and what are you using? And it was interesting. I've never heard of the tool. And so we just started, we had a conversation, we started talking, and then, and I knew from the background, definitely somebody that has the vendor. And I actually, kind of asked them, what do you guys do? Because I kind of knew, and I kind of knew I needed something, but it was like a reverse sale. So the tactics worked really well.
We got to figure out how to repeat that over and over again. Like what in your experiences, like you've been around for a while, and you've worked with
Nice
a
way of
lot of
saying I'm
different
old. Thank you.
a lot of different partners, vendors, like, but what from your perspective to help us, like what differentiates Augusto? Like if we're going to put it on our website, what would you say differentiates us from others?
You guys become part of the team, and that's a big differentiator, because a lot of times I feel like, as I mentioned, I'm kind of like the mediary sometimes between the vendor and my team. Because a lot of times the vendors, they want to have their own view, and a lot of times too, it's you've seen this in the past, especially with like more of like a website of a vendor house. You get the same exact template that they're selling everybody else. So I'm not getting anything new there. I don't have that issue when you guys come with new, fresh thoughts. And again, like I said, you guys listen and help. Okay, so we know you're here. We know what the needs are. These are some of the things that might help complement that. And that's what I like to have in a vendor, somebody that can actually be a partner and actually getting me to the next level, as opposed to trying to sell me stuff that they already have in their suite of products. And I already know what you have. I need something new.
Mhm. Yeah, and we pride ourselves on a consultative approach, right? Like
Right.
my goal is to make our clients look good, and to help them succeed, right? Like that's our mission statement, is help our clients succeed. So if we're doing that, like we tend to stick around for a while and we tend to
Absolutely.
get involved in lots of interesting projects.
Exactly. Yeah. I throw so many different things at you guys, and it's gonna, it's, I know they probably do the eye roll after, but they wait. Like, what does he want now? But then once everybody gets going out there, like they see it at the end of the day, like, oh, I see how this is gonna really bring in a better
Yeah.
patient experience at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, the big gauge of the last question I've got is, hey, would you recommend Augusto to other hospital systems working on digital
Absolutely.
transformation projects?
Absolutely, because it's no easy venture, and you need support team that really can actually work with you, and and fluctuate too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that maybe 1 month I do have to pull back on everything, and you guys don't walk away like a lot of people would say. No, we're only going to deal with people that are spending X number of dollars and up, and that's a big thing, because a lot of times when you are in healthcare, you don't have the big dollars in your wallet to go to town with, and a lot of times they don't. When you're going to get a vendor in house, how much it's going to cost you up front. You're like, I just can't right now. What's hard is you're tied between that, but yet you can't hire because of a hiring freeze. So you kind of need to do something to move it forward. So I would say keep doing what you're doing now, and that really helps out a lot.
Cool, man. Hey, I appreciate it, Bill. It's been a great webinar series. I think you've done a great job, and I really appreciate you. And thanks again for this one.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. All right. Good catching up. Take care.